the point of sex 69. So I don't mean the point of sex 79 or the point of sex 89. I definitely do not mean the point of sex 99. I mean the point of sex 69. And so the universe is unfalsifiably a simulation. And so it conserves certain quantities: energy, angular momentum, and then charge. And so if you examine angular momentum conservation, you ask the question, why is the planet spinning towards the east? Well, a long time ago, right after the sun formed, there was a protoplanetary disk with non-uniform density. The dense regions of that collapsed into planets. So because the gas and dust nearer to the sun goes faster than that further away, um, uh, when a dense region collapses into a planet, uh, the net angular momentum needs to be conserved, and therefore the planet must spin towards the east. So I'll look up an image of a protoplanetary disk. Um, um, and so you get something looking like this. All right, and so a long time ago, there was the sun just formed, there was this disk. The density is not uniform, and a dense region of that disk collapsed into planet Earth. And then, because of angular momentum conservation, you can imagine that the gas and dust that's here is going, faster than that further away. And so when there's that uh, that net angular momentum upon collapsing into a planet is conserved, and so the planet ends up spinning towards the east, going around like. Anyway, but now, um, if you examine a puny female human protruding radially from the Earth, angular momentum conservation also applies to her. So let's say she's a figure skater. So you do figure skater, right? And so let's find some picture to illustrate my point. If you have a figure skater that's in this configuration of mass, one skate is there, and then her mass is distributed far from the center of her body. That is a configuration where her moment of inertia is high. Whereas if you compare it to let's say this, if you look at this, the skate is there, and then her mass is relatively close to the skate that's on the ice. And so if a figure skater is spinning and she moves her mass from being far dispersed from the center of rotation, which is the skate on the ice, to towards her body, she's reducing her moment of inertia, and so then she spins faster. She is not exerting any additional torque onto her body. She is just modifying her moment of inertia, and therefore she spin faster if she constrains her mass towards her body. And so what I'm saying is that the universe simulation in angular momentum conservation is why the planets spin towards the east, but also why figure skater spin faster when mass go from far away from central skate on ice towards body. Same thing for pole dancer at strip club, if pole dance is spinning around pole, so on. Anyway, uh, anyway, so now the other thing that universe simulation can serve is is charge. And so from the law of conservation of charge, you can get certain equations that are relevant to capacitors in circuits. And so and so, but also mainly one of the biggest conservation laws is uh, is conservation of energy, and um, uh, so the sun is just this fusion reactor, and it's putting four hydrogen atoms into two deuterium isotopes into a single helium. The mass of the helium is less than the mass of the four hydrogens, and so that mass defect is distributed to the sun to the Earth as energy in the form of heat and light. And so all energy on the Earth is fundamentally because of the sun. And you're like, well, Deus Ex Machina, why is wind energy um, fundamentally from the sun? Well, the answer is um, that wind is primarily caused by temperature gradients. And so because radiation decays as the square of the distance, the equator is hot, the poles are cold. And then because water has a really high specific heat capacity, during the days the land is hot, the sea is cold. So you're on a beach, the wind goes from land to sea during the day. Uh, Topographical features like mountains will affect wind patterns and so on. But it's caused by the sun and its heating of the atmosphere. Um, and so when a human or set of humans in a team decides to construct an array of wind turbines, uh, um, those wind turbines convert that kinetic energy in the air into rotational energy into then electrical energy with a dynamo. Um, and so the universe simulation is conserving energy. Now, um, if you um, um, go to a grocery store and buy bananas, or you buy apples, where do they come from? Well, um, a long time ago, if you did basic school, you learned about photosynthesis. CO2 plus H2O plus sunlight plus chlorophyll creates starch and oxygen. What is the starch doing when the tree is growing? It is building the bark of the tree. What is the starch doing when the tree has come of age and has stopped growing? It is forming the fruits of the tree, and then that starch is stored as chemical potential energy in the form of fructose and sucrose in those fruits. Now, uh, when a human goes to the grocery store, right, of course there are a bunch of workers that got the fruits to the grocery store in the first place, and then when they eat into that apple, their saliva and their digestive system will convert that chemical potential energy in the form of fructose and sucrose into energy the body can use. Now, the human workers that were on the plantation, so to speak, to collect the apples and the bananas, they have a bunch of um, you know arms, because bipedal humans have arms and stuff. And so when a human uh, you know lifts something by via bending their elbow, their bicep is pulling upwards on their forearm. And for the bicep to pull upwards on the forearm, it needs to exert, it needs to do work on the forearm. For something to do work on something, it requires energy. Why does the human body have energy? Because, well, it's taking in oxygen, and it's taking in protein, and it's taking in carbohydrates and water. And ultimately, all those things give the body energy that it needs to 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 work physically or mentally. Um, so anyway, um, 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 so anyway, uh, why I mentioned this whole universe simulations thing is that while the universe simulation is conserving certain quantities, it is also running an evolutionary algorithm which goes the following. Um, Mutation. If mutation is successful for environment, via natural selection, that person will be selected for as strong and then will procreate and produce offspring. Mutation if the mutation is good, it will be selected for. That trait that was a mutation is then reproduced in the offspring. And so, the point of Sex69, the universe simulation is not just conserving quantities, it's running that evolutionary algorithm. And so anyway, a whole lot of people have a whole lot of misconceptions about certain things. And so, let's say you are a white female that thinks that endowed men of African descent, it's because of melanin. This is false. So, Indian guys have melanin, African guys have melanin. The melanin that the Indian guys have and the melanin that the African guys have is the same reason. It was a mutation, and then it ended up being selected for because areas of India receive a whole lot of intense solar radiation, and their skin that has melanin is resistant to skin cancer. The same thing in Africa, right? But the average bone press direct length of Indian men is like 5.12 inches, whereas in Sudan, Africa, it's 7.1 inches. And so, why is there that difference? It's not melanin, it's actually temperature. And so Sudan, Africa is generally hotter than India. And so why is it temperature, Deus Ex Machina? Well, because the male body structure is the following. If you're evolving in a really hot region, your body is doing the form of homeostasis, where blood is always going to your extremities so that the body can lose heat to the environment faster. Male extremities are toes, fingers, and your dick, obviously. Which is why if you're in a cold region, all men know this, you experience shrinkage of your dick because it's cold and blood is going towards the center of your body. And so all those years of evolving in a really hot Africa not only led to the mutation of melanin, but also in general led to larger on average dick size. Ba-bing, ba-boom, 69. It all makes sense. Anyway, and so, yeah. Anyway, so, this whole natural selection evolutionary algorithm is also doing this thing where certain things that are strong will be different as per the times. And so a long time ago when humans were hunter-gatherers, right? The males were the hunters, the females were the gatherers, right? And so why, when a female brain sees a guy who's tall, like cut and muscular and like big, does she like get horny or turned on by that concept? It's because a long time ago, when humans were hunters and gatherers, right? A big guy like that could, one, hunt for meat for the family, and two, could beat up and be an alpha or dominant over the other guys, right? And so the physical dominance of a guy who was like tall and built in the old hunter-gatherer days was, again, one, you could hunt for and secure a lot of meat, and you could beat up other guys. And so you were an alpha, right? You were dominant. And so some huge-ass, buff-ass guy, right, is still, according to the female brain, dominant and makes them attracted to that physically. Even though we've progressed from a civilization that does a whole lot of physical work to just a civilization that does mental work. And so, is the body structure of like some tech guy or some software guy or some engineer guy, huge and bulky? Not necessarily. And so some software tech guy that's like not huge and bulky or physically impressive but just smart in the present time can make six figures, and 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 so what is strong in the present time is not necessarily coupled to physical dominance anymore. It's intellectual. And so there was this 12-year-old Indian guy, there's a video about him, who's working at Google, who was like this prodigy, who was pulling in like $1 million a year, some software prodigy. Anyway, and so, um, um, yeah, and so there's a whole lot of smart but not that physically intimidating guys that are strong in the present time and that they make a good living, make a good amount of money with their brains, not necessarily their brawns. So anyway, um, um, and so, um, yeah. Now, um, more on the point of Sex 69. So when a male brain sees a female, it intrinsically is looking for things that indicate fertility. And so the hormone that indicates fertility the most in a female is called estradiol. And so why is there the pornographic category, big tits, big ass? It makes sense. So a woman with higher estradiol will generally have larger breasts. Now, studies have shown that larger breasts do not correlate with larger milk supply for the baby. They just correlate with higher estradiol and generally higher fertility. That's why they're attractive. And then large backsides are usually coupled with wide hips. And so when a woman's hips are wide, why is the male brain looking at that as attractive? Because it means there's a whole lot of room to successfully, uh, uh, have a child without complications, right? Um, and so, um, and so anyway, the actual ideal proportions are, uh, if you compare the sort of waist circumference to the hip circumference of a woman, divide those two numbers. If you get 0.7, that's actually close to the aesthetic ideal for the male brain. And so the whole thing, like large breasts, hourglass figure, large backside, that screams to the male brain, you are highly fertile, you have high estradiol. But along with the point of Sex 69, our stupid prefrontal cortex decided to artificially create those visual cues for sexuality. And so Kim K, is that backside real? And no. Whoever, is that real? And so strippers, females, go ahead and put silicone in their body to artificially create visual cues signaling high estradiol, right? So, anyway, I don't like fake breasts. They're too sort of like like uh, stiff and fake looking. I don't know. So even if a woman is not top heavy, I prefer natural. So um, anyway, um, so um, anyway, um, yeah, um, um, yeah, um, anyway, uh, and so men will select for both physical and mental attributes that indicate strength in a woman. Women will as well select for physical and mental attributes that indicate strength in a male. Um, um, and so, if you look at the life of Stephen Hawking, he had a partner for a while, but as he declined, right, um, that partner, couldn't necessarily, devote much time to him because he became physically disabled, right? And so you could argue that she loved him, right? But, you know, you can't have great sex with a physically disabled guy, right? But meanwhile, the irony gave Stephen Hawking, a man with a mind that could unravel the mysteries of the universe, the irony of being disabled so that he could just do mental work all the time. And so he could think, and then his thoughts would be transcribed by a machine that was reading, might have been his eye movements. Uh, in fact, let's fact check this. Was Stephen Hawking machine tracking eye movement? Okay, muscle movement in his cheek was what was enabling him to communicate, but initially it was eye movement. Okay, so anyway, okay, um, yeah, so um, anyway, um, yeah, yeah. So anyway, back to the point of Sex 69. Um, um, you could argue that sex in the absence of impregnation and production of offspring is pointless because all it does is pleasure the limbic system and lead to dopamine production, right? And so what the modern human prefrontal cortex did was that we want to maximize happiness, maximize limbic system happiness, and minimize responsibility of, producing offspring. And so the prefrontal cortex said, I'm going to invent pills that prevent a woman from becoming pregnant, even if you have sex raw and ejaculate inside of her. I'm going to invent tube tying, and I'm going to invent condoms. Um, and so, uh, and so, what has happened is that the modern form of sex is an addiction. Just like after an adult has stopped growing, they don't really need to consume dairy, but still so many people are addicted to cheese. is the same kind of thing where people just have sex as an addiction, as a limbic system pleasurer, with contraceptive methods to have no offspring. Um, and so it's like drinking alcohol, watching pornography, playing video games, uh, eating cheese, uh, smoking a cigarette, having sex. Similarly, an addiction, a limbic system pleasurer, which has no point other than pleasure with contraceptive methods. Um, and so then you get into even darker, the point of sex 69. So um, there exist websites like Big One Dating, and then I think there was as well 8 Plus, where effectively size queens could match up with guys that were endowed. And so here's why. So um, especially after a woman has had a child normally, like not via C-section, her vagina might not revert to its prior tightness. And so if they're not sort of formally in a relationship, with the father, they can turn into a size queen because their loose vagina post childbirth now prefers a dick that is longer and thicker. And so if they want, great sex, they prefer a guy who is larger. Um, and so anyway, um, 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 but the other thing is that the point of sex 69 is that as a result of women uh, at times selecting for guys that are more endowed to have sex where they feel, more stretched out or or penetrated deeper, right? Then what happened is that all the guys started lying about size. Um, and so, especially in the pornographic industry, for marketing purposes, the size of the male actors is exaggerated. And so, if you, um, a whole lot of people know about Julio Gomez or The Break, right? And so, typically, what's propagated online for his size is that he's 14 inches. Now, um, the only way to formally measure a dick, um, when so that it can go into a statistical study, um, is called BPEL. It's called bone pressed erect length, and so it's where you put a measuring tape or a ruler as far as you can to a man's pelvic bone, and then go to his head while erect. And so you go on some pornographic website, you look at a video with break in it, and it says 14-inch hand job in the title, right? And then some human male in the comments is saying, "Bro, capping, he's like 9 inches." And so that guy is right, because he's saying that based on, accurately, pausing sections of that video and looking at what his actual bone pressed, seems to be, you know, he might be about 9 inches, if not a little bit over that, not 14 inches. But you see, in porn, they use a whole lot of tricks. They use a camera trick where um, objects near to the camera are magnified and objects further away are diminished. They use small female hands on the dick that are way smaller than male hands. They use camera angles. They use petite girls that are either skinny or short. They use shots where a male actor is spread leg and erect, and the shot is taken of him sitting, which increases the length because it's not bone pressing from the top, it's going from the bottom, and you're getting a shot from the bottom, which is longer than from the top, right? And a whole bunch of things. And so similarly as well, Fred Dingo or Mandingo, there's some video with some caption, "Girl impaled by 14-inch black cock." And then Mandingo as well, his bone pressed erect might be approximately 9 inches, but then the video says 14 inches. So anyway, in the US, the Gaussian of erect dick sizes has a mean of like somewhere between 5.1 and 5.6 inches. And so a genuine 9-inch bone pressed erect length without lying is actually above the 99.99th percentile, which means that in a room of 1,000 men, statistically, none of them are bigger than you. And so anyway, so I'm a 6'4" mixed man, and so my genetic makeup is European, Irish, European, Spanish, and then African. And so at a pub in America, some guy says, "Hey, you're black." At a tavern, some girl says, "Hey, it's Tyrone the Science Guy," which is the black analog to Bill Nye. And so in America, when a consciousness sees me and sees my hair texture and my facial features and my complexion, they see me as a light-skinned black man, right? And so Logic the Rapper says he's biracial, so bi Felicia. Logic is, he looks definitely whiter than I do. I'm definitively a light-skinned black man, based on hair texture and features. Anyway, and so by non-benevolent irony, I have a not lying bone pressed erect length of at least 9 inches, which means I'm in the 99.99th percentile. And so the point of sex 69, one of my sexual partners was 5'10" and 160 pounds and quite heavy on the backside. And so in one 20-minute session, I made her have 4 orgasms and her legs were shaking. Other times I hear her say, "Oh my God." And then a bunch of other stuff. And so by non-benevolent irony, my consciousness is coupled to having a dick in the 99.99th percentile in terms of size. And then that can do for size queens what the size queens want, which is, have sex with their forearm, effectively. But anyway, anyway, now, the point of sex 69, a whole lot of people have the misconception that the Earth is overpopulated, right? There are 8 billion people on the planet. That's like overpopulated, right? But no, it's not. So, um, in terms of the carrying capacity of the planet, uh, this was massively enhanced um, by with the agricultural revolution, um, and so and so and so um, uh, you know so um, you know there was a thing. Let's see, was it Malthus? Let's see, was it Malthus? Uh, um, um, eh, yeah, yeah, and so a long time ago there was um, 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 this idea, this Malthusian idea, that we would not be able to produce enough food for the people, and so the agricultural revolution expanded the Earth's carrying capacity, and so all those brilliant harvester machines, everything else, you know, and so 8 billion humans, in terms of the carrying capacity of the planet with agricultural technology, is not too many people. That's also not too many people for housing, right? And so the people who think the world is overpopulated don't understand inequity. And so in prosperous America, we're so prosperous where 40% of the food that the country is producing is wasted. In 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 Africa, I think it's 1 in 5 people are chronically hungry. And so it's like, okay, we're not overpopulated. It's just that America is arrogant and successful in wasting 40% of its food, while 1 in 5 African people are chronically hungry. Um, and then we also don't have like a housing shortage. We just have mansions worth millions of dollars and then owned by a few people, and then other people who can barely pay 700 a month in rent, like $700 a month in rent, and then the people on the street. Um, and so a lot of people have arguments that, hey, the world's overpopulated, I don't want to have kids. The answer is it's not overpopulated. There's enough to go around. The human condition is why things are fucked up. So anyway, the carrying capacity agriculturally with agricultural technology can support 8 billion souls, and then there's enough land and housing, to for 8 billion souls. Um, and so the truth is that um, um, for everything to stay the same, 2 humans should produce 2 humans in a 30-year cycle. And so what do I mean by that? I mean, I mean, um, I mean that a male and a female human, let's say they're 30 years old, then they have 2 kids. And then in 30 years' time, those original parents are 60 and the 2 kids are 30. Each of those 2 kids can then go out into the world and find another partner of the opposite sex, and then go ahead and have 2 kids. And then the original parents are then 90. Right? And so in a cycle, you have 0-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 60-year-olds, and 90-year-olds. Many people don't live to be 90. And so the whole idea is that if 2 humans have 2 more humans, in a 30-year cycle, the population actually stays constant. And so the whole idea is that the point of sex 69 is that with all this pointless sex just for limbic system pleasuring, with no offspring, and then people thinking the world's overpopulated, I don't want to have kids, and then people who are selfish and say I don't want to deal with a kid, I just want to live my life for myself. What happens is that the birth rates are below replacement in a lot of areas, and in the long term, this is going to lead to population collapse. Although the population will increase for some time, eventually the population will start to collapse, and you get mathematically a scenario where you have more old people than young people, and then the economy doesn't have that youth and vigor into it to give it a boost. You have too many old people, too few young people. Anyway, so 2 humans have 2 more humans. Point of sex 69. Another point of sex 79. Another point of sex 89. Point of sex 69. Anyway, so anyway, so anyway, uh, so so yeah, so anyway, uh, the non-benevolent simulation that we're in is such that the weak may not reproduce or be selected for, and the strong will. And so that's just how it is. Point of sex 69. So anyway, religion. And so in Christianity, the whole idea is that sex before marriage is a sin. You need to commit to a monogamous marriage, and then, once you've gone into that monogamous marriage, you can have sex. And so I'm 24, and I've had a good amount of sex before marriage. I'm currently single. I don't have a fiance. I've just had sex before marriage, without procreation, for pointless limbic system pleasuring, because that's what the present time evolved to do. So anyway, point of sex 69, pleasure limbic system, not 79, not 89, not 99, 69. So anyway, um, so but anyway, if you look at divorce rates in the U.S. for monogamous Christian marriages, it's like 50%. And so there's a half a chance you go into a monogamous Christian marriage, you're getting divorced. And so almost everyone I meet is just divorced. I'm like, huh? What? Why is everyone I meet divorced? And it's because love is a delusion. It's not meant to be. So, and so what's happening is that humans are mechanically selecting for things that are strong. And so, for example, like in the East, I think it might have been possibly some wealthy Indian family or whatever, a male from one wealthy Eastern family and a female from another wealthy Eastern family combined and got married, and they had like days of celebrations where the 2 rich families were basically combining their wealth with a male and a female from either one of them. And it's like, huh, is that love pure? Could some guy that doesn't come from that rich family get married to that guy from that rich family? Huh. I wonder if love is a pure meant to be thing or people are just selecting for certain evolutionarily strong traits like money. Huh. Point of sex, 69. Not 79, not 89, not 99. Point of sex, 69. So, so, anyway, so yeah. Um, so anyway, point of sex 69. Uh, 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 so anyway, uh, uh, so now we're gonna get into this other thing. So in the state of Nevada, prostitution is legal, and so there are a bunch of guys paying for sex. Um, then, uh, then now there are guys who have girlfriends. And be like, oh my gosh, sometimes I like throw $1,000 on my girlfriend. Uh, and then and then there are guys who are getting married. It's like, oh my gosh, I need to buy my wife a ring and then pay for the wedding and then like pay for like honeymoon traveling expenses. And so if you're in Nevada and you're paying for a prostitute, you're paying for sex. If you have a girlfriend and you're throwing $1,000 on your girlfriend, you're paying for sex. If you're getting married and you're buying a ring and you're paying for a wedding and you're paying for a honeymoon, you're paying for sex. How do you not pay for sex? Become a male porn star, 69. Not 79, not 89, not 99. Become a male porn star, 69. So, so anyway, uh, so anyway, um, yeah. And so, if you are a male porn star and you're making a scene, the female that you are having sex with in that scene is still having sex for money. But the money that she is going to receive is not going to come out of your pocket. It is going to come from the resulting popularity of the scene and the paying subscribers to that content. And so if it gets a good amount of views, it makes a good amount of money. And then both the male and the female in the scene will get paid. Right? And so male porn stars are having sex for free, but not only are they having sex for free, they're getting paid. And again, the female that they're having sex with in the scene is still having sex for money, as a female porn star as a job, but the money is not coming from the male's pocket, it's coming from the resulting popularity of the video. If the video gets a lot of views, it makes a lot of money. That's the source of that's the source of the money that the female is going to receive from having sex. Right? So she's still having sex for money, but it's not coming from the male's pocket. So anyway, anyway, other way you could have uh, sex for free, uh, which is because the universe is non-benevolent. There's a bunch of variants. You have a whole ton of average size guys. You have endowed guys like me. Then you have micropenis guys. And so a micropenis guy might be 3 inches when he's actually fully erect, right? And the average guy in America might be like 5.6 erect. And I'm in the 99.99th percentile where I'm bone pressed without lying at least 9 inches erect, right? And so there are websites like Big One Dating and 8 Plus and so on, where size queens match with endowed guys. When there's that match, you just kind of have sex for free. But then average and smaller guys can't do that. That's why I have the position of the universe simulation not necessarily being benevolent. It just allows variance in experience and in attributes and so on. Anyway, um, so yeah. So anyway, Bonus X69. Um, Bonus X. Um, yeah. Um, yeah. So anyway, as per all the content on this channel, it's about, trying to turn dystopian things into utopia. And I genuinely have a belief in the ability of happiness to run awash over the lands. And so I think that with increased enlightenment, less greed, less hubris, less, uh, derision, more understanding, happiness could run awash over the lands. So, anyway, um, so, um, yeah, yeah, Yeah. Um, Other point of sex 69, to address what I said earlier about males lying about size, and that the only real metric is bone press direct length from the top. And so, if I said I was 9 inches, and then a female thinks that Julia Gomez or Break is actually 14 inches, they'd be like, oh, 9, that's small. But no, 9 bone press direct without lying from the top is above the 99.99th percentile. And so, based on viewer consensus as well, Julia Gomez or Break has a bone press of also approximately 9 inches, if not at maximum like 9.86. And so even Break isn't even quite legitimately 10 inches bone pressed. He's uh, just over 9 inches bone pressed, or about 9 inches. But then he says he's 14 inches. Um, so anyway, um, so anyway, um, yeah. Um, yeah. Um, so anyway, um, yeah. And also for like point of sex 69, if you're a female and you are becoming aroused, your vagina is elongating and your cervix is going deeper inside your body to accommodate sex. And so, legitimate 9 inches bone pressed, that is, upon complete insertion, gonna hit the cervix, right? And so, again, legitimate 9 inches bone pressed pretty much hits a woman's cervix. And so, exaggerating length beyond that is pointless because that already, kind of hits the cervix. Um, and so the whole idea is that once you hit like 9 inches bone pressed, you're going to hit a woman's cervix. And so then the difference is, are you 9 inches in thin or 9 inches in thick? Because thickness as well makes a difference in the pleasure of the woman. And so if the woman feels more stretched out because you're thicker, uh, it's better than thin. Um, and so by non-benevolent irony, I'm at least 9 inches bone pressed and also thick. And so, which is like perfect. Which is why I believe in non-benevolence, because there's a bunch of other consciousnesses that are like the average, like 5.6 erect. And then there's micropenis guys that are 3 inches erect. Um, and then my consciousness has a subjective experience where I'm on the 99.99th percentile of the dick size when erect bell curve, for whatever reason. Anyway, um, yeah. Um, yeah. Um, so anyway, um, yeah. Point of sex 69. Let's address pornography. So, when a human male brain consumes porn, it turns it into a kind of a beta brain because it's giving it a lot of dopamine for barely any effort. And so, a lot of the commendable stuff I did in undergraduate college and a lot of the success I had is because I've been cold turkey on porn. And so instead of low effort, high dopamine, which is porn, I made sure my brain was coupled to high effort, high dopamine. So after a lot of suffering, doing hard things, then I get a reward after that suffering, uh, then I become stronger. Um, and so um, watching porn turns a male brain into a beta brain. It gives it too much dopamine for too little effort. And there's like infinite nude females online for free, basically. And that just kind of too much dopamine for barely any effort. It makes the brain weak. So I've been cold turkey on pornography for like years, 6 years. Yeah. Um, yeah. But then there's also the no fap community. It's like you get superpowers if you don't masturbate. Um, and so there's no actual scientific study to back that. And in fact, um, male masturbation, when like not done in excess, if you don't have a partner, is actually psychologically a stress reliever and may actually be good for you, just like if not done in excess. So potentially as well with like prostate regulation and so on. But hey, a secret: um, if you have the willpower to like go full cold turkey on even masturbation, which I have done at times, um, uh, in the night or while sleeping, your consciousness will give you a wet dream. And that's because information from the body is saying the male has not ejaculated in a while. And so then the brain, during sleep, will conjure up a wet dream such that the old sperm is removed or ejaculated. And so if you go cold turkey on masturbation, your body or brain will start giving you wet dreams to regulate prostate health and ejaculation. And so I've also experimented with that. And then when you ejaculate in the dream, you ejaculate in in the real world. So um, anyway, point of sex 69. Not 79, not 89, not 99. 69. So um, so so uh, um, yeah. Now you could go into the reason for dreaming, and so um, um, the scientific understanding of why we dream is to not overfit the neural network that is the brain. And so if the neural network is overfit to information from waking hours, it's overfit to limited information. And so one of my friends said he had a dream, or actually a nightmare, where he was trying to press the brake pedal on his car, and his car wouldn't stop. And so the reason why his consciousness gave him that dream is that in waking hours, his neural net was always fit to the brake pedal working. And so by his consciousness giving him a dream where his brake pedal was not working, it is making sure the neural net is not overfit to the brake pedal always working. And so, because that could happen in the real world as well. And so then boom, now the brain, is not overfit to the brake pedal always working. If it were to not work in waking experience, he'd be safer, right? Because the dream is fixing the overfitting problem to waking experience. The brain can't be overfit to waking experience. That's where dreams come in. Anyway, so now we don't fully understand consciousness or dreams, and so my mother, who has some notions of spirituality, she has had a dream about something, and then later it's come true. And so, for example, she had a dream that someone she knew was pregnant and that she produced twins. And then in actually the real world, that person was pregnant and then did produce twins. And so that gets into some crazy, dream prescience, like from the Dune universe with, the Kwisatz Haderach, or the voice from the outer world, or the Ben Gesserit totality, where the dreams actually come true. Now, because we don't understand theologically what the simulation is doing, or God, or consciousness, prescient dreams do happen, and frankly, we don't understand them. There could be a notion of spirituality or God that leads to that. So, anyway, so anyway, yeah. 69. I suppose then finally let's address consciousness and quantum mechanics. So, yeah, let me get. So, you got the image of this. So. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So let's do consciousness and quantum mechanics. Yeah. So I did undergraduate level quantum mechanics. Um, and so in undergraduate level quantum mechanics, you understand that a particle like an electron is modeled by a wave function, a complex valued wave function of position and time. And it is probabilistic. Once you measure the position, the wave function collapses, and then after not observing it for a while, it re-emerges or reverts to its prior state. And so anyway, an electron is described by a probabilistic wave function. And so as in this picture, you take an electron beam gun, you shoot it through a double slit. When no one is looking, you see an interference pattern build up, even though the electrons are shot through like one by one. And that indicates that the probabilistic wave function interferes like a real wave, and that therefore the interference pattern is such that the probabilistic wave function is what is interfering to over time lead to a wave interference pattern. And so that with maximal probability, they're going to that central maxima, and then the other sides are less, right? But what's interfering there is the probabilistic wave function, right? If you are actually observing the electrons, you don't get that interference pattern. You just get two streaks at the detecting sheet correspondent to the position of the two slits. And so what that says is that the universe simulation has something special with conscious observation and measurement, where, okay, no one is looking. The position doesn't have to be defined. The momentum doesn't have to be defined. It's easier for us to just have it be probabilistic. Oh, someone is looking. We need to collapse the wave function and make the position or momentum defined. And that is what the God that designed the simulation that we're in decided to do. So anyway, this has been the Point of Sex 69. Not 79, not 89, not 99. Actually just 69. Deus Ex Machina. Out.